think that's her driving. No, it's not. There we go. Okay.
Maddie, do we have practice tonight?
Yeah, we do. I think we're doing roll of pitch. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's because that's the one that's been shaky.
Yeah. Oh, it's been so bad.
Are you coming to my after party?
Yeah, hopefully.
After party?
Yeah, at my house. You gonna come?
Always an after party.
It's okay. It's David. He doesn't get invited to anything.
Yeah, especially I don't want to embarrass ourselves.
I know. But you know what? It'll be fine. I think we're gonna do a good job in the end.
Yeah. Maddie, are you not going to put on your seatbelt?
No, I think I'm good.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a really safe driver.
But it's kind of like a safety precaution. I mean, what if we get in an accident?
Yeah, but I mean, it's St. Peter. What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know. You're really not going to put it on?
No, I really think I'm fine.
Okay.
He doesn't get invited to anything.
No.
Sky.
Yeah?
You on your phone?
Yes. Do you have eyes?
Snapchat, right? You can't be doing that.
Snapchat takes like 1 second.
No, Snapchat after Snapchat is different when you're.
As long as I'm not texting, that is literally the only law.
I know you're answering streaks right now, but I know for a fact that.
Okay,
streaks are free.
it's not. I'm literally just answering one person.
Yeah.
What?
Streaks
What?
are...
I'm not even going that fast. You're literally
I know
not.
it's not wearing a seatbelt.
We have to go fast, otherwise we're gonna be late.
Maddie, do you see that car?
Yeah, it's kind of moving kind of weird.
It's going pretty fast, Maddie.
Hey, we'll be there in like 2 minutes. I'm with the non-freaking David.
Maddie.
Eva,
Oh my
Eva.
God.
Okay, well, we'll get started. My name is Dan Phillips, and I'm going to be talking about my daughter Kelly accident that occurred in 2007. Thought I'd also mention that my wife is Jane, and Kelly had two siblings, Bobby, who was in 7th grade at the time of the accident. He's now 26. And Annie, who was a sophomore at Minnetonka High School, and she's now 29. Bobby's living in Denver. Annie's living in Minneapolis. And the reason we do this is that it is really unimaginable when something like this happens to your family. And we've talked about it quite a bit over the years in hopes that students might learn something from Kelly's story and how she did die, and prevent other families from feeling the kind of pain that we endured. It was Friday, September 21st, 2007. Kelly was a senior at Minnetonka High School, had just finished her 3rd week of her senior year, which is really an exciting time. That afternoon, when she got home, she was putting the finishing touches on 3 college applications, and they never did get in the mail. They sat on our kitchen counter after the accident. For me, it was such a normal day. I guess these tragic days start out very normally. And I got home from work, and the whole family was there, but our 2 youngest, Annie and Bobby, left to go do things with friends. So it was just Jane and Kelly and myself. We had dinner. And at about 6:30, my wife asked Kelly would like her curfew extended to 1 o'clock. We had a hard and fast midnight curfew on weekends. It was under the philosophy, which I think is still true, is nothing good happens after midnight, particularly on the roads. And I said, where are you going, Kelly? And she said, well, I'm going to a senior chaperoned bonfire at Kylie's grandfather's farm. And Kylie had moved into our neighborhood a couple years earlier, really kind of sad, from a broken home. Came to live with her grandfather, who was a neighbor, and his wife. And Kelly had reached out and befriended her and helped her break into the Minnetonka School District. So they were friends. And I didn't quite know where this farm was. I didn't think it was very far away. It turned out to be a little farther than I thought. It was south of Carver, so it was about a 20-mile drive from our home. But I instinctively said, no, let's keep it at midnight. She wanted it 1. And then she left, came back, said, Dad, here's the deal. I talked to Kylie. It's her bonfire, Grandpa's farm. She's agreed to how about if I'm home by 12:30? And I said, okay. I did notice that 10 minutes or so before Kelly left, she seemed a bit agitated, and she's never that way. And I'll kind of fill in later where that agitation came from. But at 7:30, she walked out the door and said, bye, I love you. And she never came back. At about 9:30, our phone rang, and my wife answered. And I heard her go, no, no, but not real scared, no, no. And what I thought was happening is Kelly got to the bonfire and there was drinking, and she was looking for a ride home. Because that had happened before. Kelly at the time was a non-drinker. But Jane got off the phone and said that was a neighbor, and she said Kelly's been involved in an accident. And the first thought I had is, thank God we all wear seatbelts. We were a seatbelt fanatic family. When I was 22, I rolled a car. I was drinking, but I was properly restrained and uninjured. Our family knew about that, and we all made sure we always wore a seatbelt. So I thought, this can't be that bad. Well, then my wife called 911, and she got a hold of somebody, and I could tell it wasn't good news, and she kind of started staggering towards the front door. I followed her, and 2 police cars pulled up simultaneously to the front of our house. So I knew this wasn't good, and I walked out. I remember September night air. It was dark at the time, how it felt, and I met the officers halfway in the middle of the yard and just asked, is she dead? And they said, no, but she's seriously injured, and you need to go down to Hennepin County Medical Center. And on the way to Hennepin County Medical Center, phone rang, and I did answer it, and it was a nurse from HCMC, and he asked, are you related to Kelly Phillips? Yes, I'm her dad. And he goes, well, I'm a nurse. I'm going to be taking care of Kelly. She was airlifted to HCMC, and I'll talk to you when you get here. Well, you're starting to figure out if she was airlifted. This isn't a broken collarbone. This isn't something that we're going to pick her up and go home and watch a movie. This is bad. And there was the error of the cell phone. So word had spread pretty rapidly amongst her friends group of the accident. And by the time we got to HCMC, there was a couple hundred kids in the lobby. It was really a pandemonium. It really was. And they put us in a room, just our family and a couple friends, good friends that had gathered, and a nurse came in and told us a little bit more about the accident. And he said that there was 3 people in the car. The car left the road and it rolled over. Kelly was ejected. And that's the first we heard that there was a third person. We thought it was just Kylie, the neighbor, and Kelly. But I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. Her cousin had ended up coming unexpectedly. And that Kelly had been ejected, and I said, that's not possible. She always wears a seatbelt. And my daughter Annie had arrived, and she was sitting behind me and said, Dad, I bet Kelly was in the back seat because Kylie's car did not have workable seatbelts in it. So that was shocking. And then, I don't know, a half hour later, Hennepin County doctor came in, and he was a neurosurgeon, and he was a young guy, and I could tell he was pretty rattled. And he gave us an update on Kelly, and the first thing he said is she's unresponsive. I really didn't know what that meant. It's not good. And that her condition is very critical. And then he paused and said, it's very grave. About midnight, we got escorted up to HCMC's intensive care pediatric area. And they had Kelly at the far end of the building, and it just really was amazing. They had probably 8 doctors and nurses around her, all sorts of tubes. She was on a respirator. But the crazy thing is, she really, her face was a little puffy, but she didn't have any glaring obvious injuries. Her injuries were in her head. She looked just like the same girl that's on the picture that you'll see. That was her senior picture taken a couple months before the accident, or the same girl that left at 7:30 and said, "Bye, I love you." My family left, and I stayed and talked to the who turned out to be the head of pediatric intensive care, and I just asked him, does Kelly have a chance? And he put his arm around me and said, no, she's had massive brain injuries. No, she does not have a chance. And he did say that any sort of chances she had would be, the best hope you'd have is she'd be in a permanent vegetative state the rest of her life. And he did make the statement, which I do think is true, is there are injuries worse than death. And so I didn't sleep much that night. I didn't tell my family. But what they do in a situation like this is, they said with a young person, sometimes there's miracles. So they tested her at about 10 o'clock in the morning, and they came back and said, no, she's brain dead. We're going to do another test at 6 o'clock. And they did a test at 6 o'clock, and then that's when the death certificate was signed at 6 o'clock on Saturday night. During the day, it's kind of interesting, HCMC has very strict visitation policies, but they had put Kelly at the far end of the hall and then left the door unlocked, and all day Saturday they let people come in and say their goodbyes to Kelly. It was really quite amazing. And not only did Kelly go to a big high school, but she was very involved in Mount Olivet Church, which is a very large Lutheran church. And a lot of the Mount Olivet friends had come as well to give their goodbyes to her. I'm going to talk a little bit about the accident. I said she left at 7:30. The accident occurred shortly before 8 o'clock, and because of a last-minute change, Kylie's cousin was supposed to ride with their grandparents to the bonfire, but for some reason he didn't, and he was riding with Kylie, so when they pulled in our house, Kelly had to jump in the back seat that lacked workable seat belts. The cousin was the only one properly restrained. He had a shoulder harness and a belt, and the car rolled. He was pretty badly injured, but he fully recovered. Kylie didn't like to wear her shoulder belt, so she only had a seat belt on. And the cousin described, I've read the police report, how the accident occurred. Kylie also was late to her own bonfire, so she was speeding. And the cousin said that she was texting, and all of a sudden a wheel went off on the right. She looked up, yelled shit, tried to correct, overcorrected, was heading for the left ditch, and then came back to the right, started to go into the ditch, tried to pull it back onto the road, but the car began to rotate, hit a culvert, and it rolled twice. So Kelly was ejected, which is never good in an accident. Kylie, because she didn't have her shoulder belt, was hanging over the car door and was crushed and was dead at the scene. This is County Road 40. It's a very good piece of road. It's south of Carver. It goes to Belle Plaine. And you can see she went off the road right about where this slight curve is. It's not really even a curve. So the only way this could have happened is, one, she was speeding, and two, not paying attention. If you look closely, there's 3 little yellow dots on the line. That's where she finally went off into the right ditch. Entirely preventable, obviously. Texting, speeding. It also was dark, which I think added a little bit to the scene. I mentioned that Kelly had been agitated. I found out several months later, my wife actually helped me confirm this, that Kelly had talked to Kylie, and Kylie had told her, sorry, Kelly, I'm running late, and is it okay if my cousin comes? And that, to Kelly, she knew two things. Kylie would be speeding because she's late, and Kelly was going to be in the back seat without workable seat belts. She actually did call some friends that were nearby and looking for a ride, but they wouldn't give her a ride. So she got in the car and thought, it's just 25 minutes. I'll get there and never do it again. But it just shows you that as crazy it is, one time in her life she didn't have a seatbelt on and she died because of it. So I will mention the seatbelt thing because that really irritates me. I just read this a couple days ago that 16 and 17-year-olds, the second leading cause of death is traffic accidents, and a lot of them are preventable. But I read that vast majority of people are wearing seatbelts, including teenagers, but 50% of the fatalities involved kids that aren't wearing seatbelts. So you can see dramatically your odds improve if you have seatbelts on. And I've talked about this quite a bit, that in the Twin Cities, anytime it snows and the roads are slick, there's many rollovers that occur. We don't hear about most of them because most people are properly restrained, and in a rollover, you unbuckle, you're not hurt, unless you don't have a seatbelt on. And then in a rollover, you're often ejected, and if you're ejected, your chances of death are very serious injuries. It just happens over and over again. So I can't stress that enough. I mentioned the college application. Kelly was working on some college applications Friday afternoon, her last day, and one of them was to the University of Colorado. We had, for 10 years, had gone on a family ski trip to Winter Park, and Kelly had become quite a skier. But on our last trip, my wife Jane and Kelly had visited the University of Colorado at Boulder. She was really excited about it, and I think that's probably where she would have ended up. She came back with a sweatshirt. This is the sweatshirt she had on. This is the University of Colorado sweatshirt that she had on when she died. And you can see they cut it. When you're in an accident like this, they cut off all your clothes. But I remember her walking in with the sweatshirt, coming back from the Boulder visit and so excited. And it was really tough when we got the little bag of her clothes and that was in it. One of the real big ironies of this accident was, I showed you where the accident scene was. The farm was less than a mile away. They were about 1 minute from turning in to the farm. She just not texted. And Kelly'd be alive today, 31 years old, and I wouldn't be speaking to you today. So, talked about the accident, very preventable. Hopefully you'll keep this in mind. I was told of an incident. I do think lots of people have talked about Kelly, and I know people that didn't used to wear seatbelts, and they urged them for their kids too. But this was maybe 2 months after Kelly's accident, and there was a group of 4 Minnetonka students heading to a dance, and 3 of the 4 did not have seatbelts on. And the driver said, "Hey, wait a minute, click your belts." And they go, no. And somebody said, "Remember Kelly." So they all clicked, and it was less than 2 minutes later, they lost control and hit a telephone pole. Now, I don't know what the result have been, but the chances are at least 1 or 2 of them could have been severely injured. That was a really neat story for me to hear. I also like to talk about Kelly the person, and I remember hearing before this accident stories of people getting killed and injured in car accidents, and you never think it can happen to you, and it can, and it did to us. But I think it's important to talk about who she was. And she was a National Honor Society student. very involved at Mount Olivet Church that I talked about, including she was a camp counselor up at Cathedral of the Pines, our summer camp in Lutsen. She's a very good skier, as I talked about. She wasn't a great athlete, but she loved sports. She played hockey, she played tennis and golf. I think she really liked the camaraderie, and she liked to compete. One of her characteristics is she was always looking out for the underdog. She hated bullies. She would get in trouble confronting bullies who didn't like to be confronted, but she couldn't help herself. She did. And she also had an eye for kids that might have been hurting or suffering or had a problem. And one stands out. It's probably 3 weeks after the accident, and a classmate named Hannah came to her house, and she was really crying. And so I just have to tell you about a story involving Kelly. And it was third grade. And she said, our family had just moved to Minnetonka a week before school started. And I didn't know anybody. I didn't know Kelly. And on the very first day of school, the teacher had this bright idea of, here's what we're going to do, class. I want you to pick a partner, and on Friday we're going to have a little dance recital, and I want you during the week with your partner to get together at their home or recess and practice. And then I'd like you to pick partners. And Hannah telling us that I didn't know anybody. I was shy. I just moved into town. I didn't know who to ask. And she said a tear was about here, and Kelly tapped her on the shoulder and said, hey, Hannah, would you be my partner? I know no one else in the class, including the teacher, knew what Hannah was going through, but I think Kelly somehow did. Another incident that sticks out is at her visitation. It was a big funeral, obviously. One of the hockey players who transferred into Minnetonka opened enroll for the right reasons, academic. She was a very good student, pretty good golfer. She was on the golf team, but she was really a bad hockey player. And she said to me, you know, that Kelly was the only person on the team that paid any attention to me, made me feel part of the team. And it wasn't that everybody was mean to Taylor, but most of the players just ignored her. And I think that being ignored can be pretty painful, so you might keep that in mind as well. So Kelly had a compassionate side to her, but she also was a lot of fun, outrageous at times. And another hockey player came through the line and said, you know what, Mr. Phillips, you know why I like Kelly so much? And I'm thinking, boy, this is going to be some great humanitarian feat that Kelly done. Had my chest puffed out, and she said, well, we were at a hockey game in Victoria in the locker room, and Kelly had to go to the bathroom, and there weren't any bathrooms in the locker room, so she peed in a garbage can. And I go, well, thank you for sharing that, Steffi. But that was her outrageous sense of humor, and I think that's important to remember, too. If you're ever in the Pagel Ice Arena, which is right behind Minnetonka High School, the Minnetonka Hockey retired her number 17 jersey, and it's hanging in a shadow box in the lobby. And there's a really nice plaque that gives Kelly's story, a little bit about who she was. And it's really a nice honor that the Minnetonka girls hockey team established a character and leadership award, and it's been renamed the Kelly Phillips Award. And it lists all the previous winners of that. And I will tell you that it has become a really big honor to win that award every year. Her 17 jersey also reminds me, the week of the accident was homecoming week at Minnetonka. So lost Kylie died, a classmate, Kelly died, a really tough week for the students at Minnetonka High School. And we did play Edina Friday night in the homecoming game, and my wife and I went up and sat in the press box for a little while because they had kind of a ceremony to begin the game and let some balloons off. And then we had to get out of there. It was really tough. But because Kelly went to Mount Olivet, she knew a number of the Edina football players, and this still gets me a little choked up. Many of the Edina football players wrote the number 17 on their socks for the game. And I thought that was an incredible tribute. So, hopefully in sharing Kelly's story about the accident, there's a lot to learn. Driving distracted, speeding, make sure you wear your seatbelts. It's very important. You don't want your friends and family to endure the pain, and you don't think it can happen to you, but it can. The week before Kelly died, Pastor Youngdahl, who was a longtime pastor at Mount Olivet, had asked Kelly to give a talk at 2 stewardship dinners. And he asked Kelly to talk about making a difference, and her speech, she felt she had, for all the volunteer work she'd done, a lot of the coaching she did, a lot of the camp counseling she did up at Cathedral of the Pines. The other thing is that she said that she really felt that by helping others, it had helped grow her faith, and that by helping others, it really had provided more meaning in her life. And I know that is really true. The people that are the most self-absorbed are the most miserable people. Kelly had it figured out. And she closed her speech at Mount Olivet with a Bible verse, and it's out of her student Bible, so it reads a little differently than maybe you have read it, but it's Colossians 1:10, and I'm going to close my comments as she closed that speech that night. Then the way you live will always honor and please the Lord, and you will continually do good, kind things for others. Thanks a lot.
Lakewood County 911.
Hey, got in a car accident.
Okay.
In the car accident, there's another vehicle coming and we hit it.
Where are you at?
St. Peter High School.
St. Peter High School. Is anybody injured?
I think my friend Sky's injured, and my friend Eleanor, I don't know what happened to her. She didn't have her seatbelt on.
Okay. So is there anybody that needs to get extracted from the vehicle?
I don't know if I can get out. I mean, I'm hurt right now.
Okay. So there's injuries and there's trapped. Okay. We have plenty of help on the way, okay? Just verifying you're at the St. Peter High School, correct? Yep.
Yeah.
On the way, okay?
$4,319 for a 2 motor vehicle accident, several injuries, 1 possible DOA, 2121 West Broadway Street, 2121 West Broadway Street. 2 vehicles involved, several injuries, a blue PT Cruiser and a white Malibu.
$2,319 for a motor vehicle accident with injuries, 2 vehicles, 1 possible DOA, 2121 West Broadway, 2121 West Broadway, 2 vehicles involved, head-on collision, white Chevy Malibu, blue PT Cruiser. Start fire and ambulance, please.
24 copies in a row.
24 copies in a row.
Lakewood County Sheriff's Office, St. Peter Fire, you were needed for a 2 motor vehicle accident with injuries, possible extrication on a PT Cruiser, 2121 West Broadway Street. Multiple victims involved, possible 1 DOA. Copy, St. Peter Fire, 1112.
1921 is arriving. We have 2 vehicles, 2 victims ejected.
Copy 24 arriving, 2 vehicles.
Can you hear me? I don't think she's breathing.
I don't have a pulse.
What's the other one in there,
Just stay right there. Do you have any pain or injury?
I don't think, I'm just,
Oh, just hang tight, okay? We got ambulance on the way. Fire department's on the way. We'll be up yet.
Okay, so you were on your phone?
Yeah, but I wasn't texting or anything. I was just on Snapchat. I wasn't texting or anything. I was looking up fast.
I'm gonna have you just have a seat right here. There'll be an officer that's gonna need to talk to you, okay? Fine on here, okay.
927 and 917. I called over to Sibley. They confirmed the word over the phone and
A video, and then and then David screamed, and then there was a big bump, and then it just and then Eleanor wasn't talking anymore, and Maddie was on the ground, and
Let's get some further out, okay?
it's just.
You're under arrest for criminal vehicular homicide. We're gonna go back to the jail and take a statement from you, okay? $1924, $1900. I'm 1015, transporting one to Nicollet County Jail.
Not for you.